Hello everybody, hope we're all doing well. Welcome back to more CSGO news. Apparently you guys liked my last intro, so I probably should have done that. So hello everybody, okay? What's up people? Welcome back to another CSGO update. One of the biggest Valve updates we probably have ever seen to date, and that actually a huge update for esports as well. That being Valve's latest blog post. I will link it down below for all of you guys, but I bet I can break it down pretty fast as well. So let's hop into it. The first and foremost, I think most important point is their update on exclusivity leagues. If you guys have been around over the past couple of weeks, really not too long ago, we had announcements for the ESL Pro Tour. ESL and DreamHack teaming up for 20 events around the world. Alongside that, $4+ million in prize winnings, and it was semi-exclusive though. Apparently some of those teams who would be invited to that tour around the world in several of those events would not be able to participate or allowed to participate in the ECS and their league as well. A bit weird, right? A couple weeks later, or not too long later as well, that was actually Blast Pro announcing Blast Premier with an additional $4.25 million in winnings, and also semi-exclusive. So all of a sudden, guys, we have these huge semi-exclusive franchise leagues, whatever you want to call them, and tons of prize winnings being announced for a lot of players and teams who do partake. Only one catch though, for a lot of those teams, they can partake in those leagues, but not other leagues as well. And you know what Valve has done in their latest blog post? A huge response. We had Valve pretty much say, hey, yeah, by the way, all your hard work, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're not going to allow you to operate our game and use our game CSGO for your tournaments if you don't allow teams to partake in whatever events they want. And for that, I honestly, guys, a huge round of applause, a huge announcement. I was not totally against this exclusivity leagues. I think it could have been very interesting, but it was actually Valve saying, hey, long term, we think this is going to hurt our game. So no, you cannot actually have a tournament or a league or a series of events out there that you allow teams to partake in, but then don't allow them to partake in any other events they want to. That just is not how it works. So Valve is pretty much saying no to exclusive leagues, which is a giant announcement, especially with Call of Duty, League of Legends, Overwatch, all doing their franchise exclusive leagues. So it seems Valve was like, hey, we don't want to operate that way, and I don't think people really understand how big that really is for the future of CSGO. We will continue hopefully to thrive, and Valve wants to do it in their way. Now, this will not stop all exclusivity, right? You still have events and organizers out there like Blast Pro alongside ESL Pro Tour. They can still schedule their events to overlap with other organizers, thus forcing teams to actually choose them or the other organizer. So it's kind of indirectly exclusive. That's going to be allowed from going here on out, but Valve's pretty much saying directly, you cannot directly state in your rules or actually make these teams not partake in other events and only partake in yours. So there's still going to be some semi-exclusivity out there. It'll just be forcing teams to actually choose which events they want to go to. On top of that, I think a very important semi-overlooked point out there is Valve talking about conflict of interest yet again. If you guys remember way back when they actually talked about this and updated all of us on this, it was actually when Astralis had 3 teams, Godsent, Heroic. They have now sold off both those teams. This is when conflict of interest was at the height of its peak of its talking points, but now it's reiterated yet again, and you have to wonder why. Why is Valve bringing this up as of right now? As they do go on to state, I think very importantly, teams and players should not have a financial interest in the success of any teams they compete against. And you have to wonder, why is Valve bringing this up? Who do you look to in this case? I already tweeted about this guy, Zeus. You would assume, being the president of Pro 100, he would have a financial interest, if not shares, in Pro 100. That would now be a conflict of interest. We look towards, you know, Get Right. If he wants to leave NIP and he has ownership in NIP, he will now probably be forced to sell those shares. Same goes for Forest. Same goes for any of the Astralis guys. And one last point when I touch on this player ownership, which is now seemingly not going to be allowed, we look at a guy like Cajun B, formerly of Astralis, and most recently, it was actually a while back though, to the most recent Astralis Q&A. According to them, he actually sold some of his shares, but not all of them. He still has a small vested ownership interest or small shares in the Astralis brand. So will he be forced to sell now as well? It's a huge talking point because yes, if anyone out there now has ownership or financial interest in any other team besides their own, that's going to be a conflict of interest, and Valve is saying nixnay, no. So we will see what happens when these players, especially a guy like Zeus, he got out right at the right time, I should say. He retired, and that will not be a problem for him going forward as well. Along with that though, a guy like like GetRight, who we are expecting to leave NIP. What does that mean for his ownership shares as well? A guy like Cajun B will probably looked into as well. And there might be several players out there who have ownership or stake in their team that we don't know about yet. So a great point's now made, guys, a clarification on what a conflict of interest now is, and we should see, you know, none of these weird moments where teams or certain people have interest in multiple teams, or at least hopefully those things will get cleared up. And very lastly, and still very important, especially when it came time for the major broadcaster, that being Starladder, there were many accusations, myself included. I got to admit, guys, and I think I already have as well, I certainly rushed to a conclusion to blame Starladder for putting on a very poor major after their DMC strikes, or DMCA strikes. They sent out to several streamers out there, Flom being one of them. Now, of course, that situation has since been resolved, but it's actually Valve clarifying. I would say of the entire post, they've made some great points. This one, you know, typical Valve, you can't have everything you want from them. This was a bit late, right? Obviously, around the major time, we would have loved a clarification exactly who had the broadcast rights to actually stream the game of CSGO, because from this point up until our last major, guys, everyone thought that GOTV, in-game streaming, broadcasting of the in-game GOTV CSGO games, we thought it was completely fine and should not be faced with any trouble out there until Starladder apparently started enforcing their rights. It was actually clarified by Valve themselves, guys. Every major organizer has, or every major operator has, the broadcast rights solely to themselves. It just so happened Starladder was the first one to fully enforce that. So I do apologize to them, and going forward, that it's expected though that tournament organizers or major operators actually work more closely with streamers out there, whether it's the Majors Club alongside Richard Lewis and Flom, whether it's more people out there that want to restream it for the benefit of the major operator. It's expected they try and at least work with streamers out there to have some alternatives to them actually streaming the major itself. I would have loved this post though a while back, so we cleared the air way before this major issue became an issue. And it's still super weird because we literally have screenshots out there. If you guys go and search for them on the Steam forums, it was Steam replies or Valve replies on Steam that clearly say GOTV is free game, and it still is for Dota 2. So if you are anyone out there in the Dota 2 scene, you can restream anything on GOTV in Dota, but now not so much in CSGO for majors. That belongs to the major operator. I wish it would have been cleared a bit earlier. Besides that though, that's the only kind of shallow point in the entire article or the entire blog post. Again, link down below for all of you guys. Some huge points brought up by Valve. I think some great points brought up by Valve. Conflict of interest. We'll see how players going forward kind of approach their ownership, especially when they leave the teams they have partial shares or ownership of. DMCA or operating rights have now been clarified a bit more. So going forward, hopefully major or operators actually cooperate with us more so we actually know what we can and cannot do. And we'll see how that affects things for our next major in 2020. And then very lastly, I think most importantly as well, exclusivity, frick that.